Captain Hyunwoo Park stood at the viewing window of his ship, watching the massive space station grow larger as they approached. Nexus Station was unlike anything humanity had ever built. It stretched for kilometers in every direction, a gleaming metal city floating in the darkness of space. Hundreds of alien ships moved around it like insects around a bright light. "First time seeing something this big?" asked So Young Kim, the team's language expert. She joined him at the window, her tablet showing translation programs that had taken months to develop. "Not the size that surprises me," Hyunwoo replied. "It's how old everything looks." Dongmin Lee, their military advisor, looked up from his security briefing. "The Council has been around for thousands of years. Makes sense their technology would be different from ours." Hyunwoo nodded, but something felt wrong. The alien ships looked impressive, but their design seemed almost simple compared to human vessels. Their weapons were visible and crude. Human ships hid their weapons inside sleek hulls. These aliens seemed to want everyone to see how dangerous they were. The communication system crackled to life. A voice spoke in broken English, clearly using a basic translation program. "Human vessel, you will dock at Bay 77. Do not deviate from assigned path." "Friendly bunch," Dongmin muttered. Their ship moved through the docking sequence automatically. Around them, alien vessels of every shape and size went about their business. Some looked like living creatures with organic curves and flowing lines. Others were geometric and sharp, all angles and crystal formations. A few seemed to be made of liquid metal that shifted and changed as they watched. "Remember," Hyunwoo said as they prepared to disembark, "we're here to make friends. Earth needs allies out here. And trade partners," So Young added. "Our planet could use their advanced technology." Dongmin checked his sidearm one more time, even though it was purely ceremonial. Human weapons were not allowed in the council chambers. "Just hope they're as interested in friendship as we are." The docking bay was enormous, with a dozen different atmospheres separated by energy fields. Humans could breathe the standard council atmosphere, which saved them from wearing bulky suits. As they walked down the ramp from their ship, they got their first close look at galactic civilization. A group of tall, thin beings with blue skin and 4 arms gestured at them with what might have been curiosity or disdain. Near the wall, creatures that looked like walking trees discussed something in a language that sounded like wind through leaves. In the center of the bay, a delegation of beings made entirely of crystal waited for them. The crystal being in front stepped forward. When it spoke, its voice sounded like breaking glass, but the translation came through clearly. "I am Velthari, speaker for the Galactic Council. You are the representatives of the species from the 3rd planet of the Sol system. We call it Earth," Hyunwoo said with a diplomatic smile. "I'm Captain Hyunwoo Park, representing the United Earth government." "Earth," Velthari repeated, as if testing the word. "A simple name for a simple world. Come. The council will see you now." As they walked through the station's corridors, Hyunwoo noticed how the other aliens looked at them. Some stared with open curiosity, like visitors at a zoo. Others seemed barely to notice them at all. A few moved away as they passed, as if humans carried some kind of disease. "Popular crowd," Dongmin whispered. The council chambers were vast beyond imagination. Thousands of beings filled seats that rose up in circles around a central platform. The noise was incredible, hundreds of different species talking, arguing, and conducting business in dozens of languages. The translation system struggled to keep up, creating a constant background hum of electronic voices. Velthari led them to a small platform near the bottom of the chamber. "You will stand here during the proceedings," he said. "Do not speak unless given permission." Other species had much larger platforms closer to the center. Some had entire sections of seating for their delegations. Humans got a space barely large enough for the 3 of them to stand together. "The Council recognizes the petition of the Sol System humans for membership in the galactic community," Velthari announced. His crystal voice carried clearly through the chamber. "As is traditional, they will be granted probationary status with limited privileges." A being that looked like a giant squid raised several tentacles. "What can these primitives offer the galaxy?" Their technology is thousands of years behind ours. Their planet shows signs of recent nuclear warfare, added a creature that seemed to be made of living metal. They are clearly a violent and unstable species. So Young started to step forward, but Hyunwoo put a hand on her arm. Better to let them talk first and learn what they thought of humanity. They have achieved faster than light travel, Velthari pointed out. That shows some promise. Barely, laughed the squid being. Their ships are crude and inefficient. They will be lucky to survive in the galaxy without our protection. The debate continued for hours. Humans were discussed like objects rather than people. Their technology was called primitive. Their planet was described as a dangerous backwater. Several species suggested that humans should be restricted to their own solar system for everyone's safety. Finally, Velthari called for a vote. All in favor of granting limited membership to the Sol system humans? About half the chamber raised hands, tentacles, or other appendages. It was barely enough to pass. Humans are granted level 5 membership, Velthari announced. They may engage in basic trade and cultural exchange. They are prohibited from accessing advanced technologies or participating in council military operations. They will be monitored for compliance with galactic law. Level 5 was the lowest possible membership. It was usually given to species that had just discovered fire, not ones that could travel between stars. As the ceremony ended and the chamber began to empty, Hyunwoo maintained his diplomatic smile. Inside, he was furious. Humanity had come here hoping for partnership and found only condescension. That could have gone better, So Young said quietly. Could have gone worse too, Dongmin replied. At least they didn't shoot us. As they followed Velthari toward their assigned quarters, So Young heard two aliens talking in a language her translator couldn't identify. But she caught a few words that made her blood run cold. Check the old archives. That name sounds familiar somehow. Wasn't there something about Sol System in the forbidden records? She said nothing to her companions but made a mental note to improve her language programs as quickly as possible. Something told her that humanity's introduction to the galaxy was far from over. That night, as they settled into their cramped quarters aboard Nexus Station, none of them could shake the feeling that they were being watched. In the depths of space, ancient secrets began to stir, and the galaxy's peaceful order was about to face its greatest test in 10,000 years. Deep beneath the Council's home planet, in archives that stretched for kilometers underground, Zermoth moved through rows of data crystals with growing unease. The ancient keeper had served the archives for over 200 years, and in all that time, he had never been asked to research something that made him this nervous. His tentacles moved gracefully over the control surfaces, calling up records from the galactic database. The request had come from high up in the Council hierarchy. Someone wanted to know everything about the species from Sol System, and they wanted it fast. Computer, show me all records relating to Sol System, third planet, species designation. Human, Zermoth commanded. The holographic display flickered to life, showing a sparse collection of files. Most were recent. Trade agreements, first contact protocols, basic biological scans. Nothing unusual for a newly discovered species. But as Zermoth dug deeper, he began to find gaps in the data. Computer, why are there no historical records for Sol System prior to 50 galactic cycles ago? Historical records for that system are classified or corrupted, the computer replied. Access requires special authorization. Zermoth's tentacles twitched with curiosity. In 200 years of archive work, he had never encountered a system with no historical records. Every star system in the galaxy had some kind of entry, even if it was just uninhabited or no life detected. Meanwhile, on Earth, historian Ji-Hai Choi was having problems of her own. The Galactic Council had requested detailed records of human history for their cultural database. It should have been simple work, but the more she researched, the more confused she became. Tae-ho, come look at this, she called to her colleague. Tae-ho Yoon was Earth's leading expert on ancient civilizations, and if anyone could make sense of the inconsistencies, it would be him. What's wrong? Tae-ho asked, setting down his coffee and walking over to Ji-Hai's workstation. I'm trying, To compile our historical records for the aliens, but nothing makes sense, GHFY said, pointing at her screen. Look at these ancient texts from different cultures around the world. Taeho leaned in to read. Sumerian tablets described gods who came from the stars, but were defeated by the children of Earth. Egyptian hieroglyphs showed battles in the sky between humans and sky demons. Norse sagas told of warriors who traveled to the realm of the gods and conquered it. These all sound like mythology, Taeho said slowly, but the details are very specific. That's what's bothering me, GHFY replied. Mythology is usually vague and symbolic. These texts read like military reports. She pulled up more files. Aboriginal Dreamtime stories from Australia described star people who came to steal the land but were sung out of existence by human warriors. Mayan codices showed human armies marching across the night sky. Celtic legends spoke of humans who sailed among the stars and made the old gods flee. In terror. GHFY, this is impossible, Taeho said. These civilizations never had contact with each other, but they all tell the same basic story. Aliens came to Earth and humans defeated them. Not just defeated them, GHFY corrected. According to these texts, humans hunted them down and destroyed them completely. Back on Nexus Station, things were getting worse for the human delegation. Trade negotiations that should have been simple were stalling for no reason. Species that had seemed friendly during the ceremony now refused to meet with them. Their quarters were searched twice by security teams looking for contraband. Something's changed, Dongmin reported during their daily briefing. The aliens are acting like we're dangerous. Dangerous? Hyunwoo laughed bitterly. They barely consider us civilized. So Young looked up from her translation work. I've been monitoring their communications. My programs are getting better at understanding their languages. They're scared of something, but I can't figure out what. Scared of us? Dongmin asked. That's what doesn't make sense, So Young replied. We've done nothing threatening. We've followed every rule, accepted every restriction, but they're treating us like we're about to attack them. In the archives, Zermoth had reached the same conclusion. Something about the humans was making the council nervous, and he was determined to find out what. He began searching older records, going back centuries, then millennia. Computer, show me all records relating to Sol system, any time period, any classification level. That search requires alpha-level clearance, the computer replied. Zermoth's tentacles curled in frustration. He only had beta-level clearance, which was supposed to be enough for any historical research. Alpha-level clearance was reserved for current military operations and state secrets. Computer, why would historical records about Sol system require alpha-level clearance? Information not available to your clearance level. That night, Zermoth made a decision that would change the course of galactic history. Using access codes he wasn't supposed to have, he broke into the alpha-level archives. What he found there made his blood run cold. The first file was a warning, written in the ancient script of the long-dead Kephrite Empire. To all who come after us, avoid the third world of the Yellow Star. Death waits there. The second file was from the Mordon Collective, dated 8,000 galactic cycles ago. Our expedition to Sol 3 has been lost. All 40,000 ships destroyed by primitive inhabitants. Recommend permanent quarantine of the system. The third file was the most chilling of all. It was from the Great Alliance, a confederation of 12 species that had ruled half the galaxy, 10,000 years ago. Final entry, the demons from Sol 3 have found our home worlds. They don't just kill us, they make war into an art form. To whoever finds this record, never wake the humans. They are not like us. They are death itself given shape. Zermoth's tentacles shook as he read file after file. Species after species had encountered the humans of Sol 3, and none had survived. But these weren't records of invasion or conquest. These were records of retaliation. According to the files, every alien species that had tried to claim Sol system had been systematically hunted down and destroyed, not just their fleets, their entire civilizations. The humans of 10,000 years ago had turned genocide into a precise science. The final file was a decision by the Galactic Council of that era. The system's soul shall be stricken from all records and renamed in the database. The species there will be monitored but never contacted. Should they develop spaceflight, they are to be treated as an unknown species with no historical connection to previous events. This decision is classified at the highest level to prevent panic. Zermoth sat back in his chair, his ancient mind struggling to process what he had learned. The friendly, primitive humans now living on Nexus Station were the descendants of the most terrifying species in galactic history. The Council had hidden this truth so well that even they had forgotten it. But now the humans were back among the stars, and someone in the current Council was starting to remember. The gaps in the historical record, the classified files, the nervous behavior of the other species. It all made sense now. On Earth, Jihai and Teho were reaching the same conclusion through a different path. The ancient texts weren't mythology at all. They were historical records of humanity's first contact with alien species, and those contacts had ended very badly for the aliens. Teho, I think we need to be very careful about what we send to the Galactic Council, Jihai said quietly. Why? It's just history. That's the problem, Jihai replied. I don't think they want to know our real history. In space, ancient fears were awakening, and the galaxy's peaceful order was about to face the return of its oldest nightmare. The humans were back, and this time, they thought they were the good guys. Zermoth stood before the sealed entrance to the forbidden archives, his tentacles trembling with both fear and determination. In his 200 years as keeper, he had never broken this many rules in a single day. But the truth about the humans was buried somewhere behind these massive doors, and the galaxy needed to know what they were dealing with. The entrance was sealed with technology from the old empire, layers of security that hadn't been updated in millennia. Zermoth's ancient access codes, passed down from keeper to keeper, still worked on the primitive systems. The massive doors groaned open, releasing air that hadn't been breathed in 10,000 years. Inside, the forbidden archives were a tomb of dead civilizations. Holographic displays flickered weakly, showing the last records of species that no longer existed. Zermoth moved carefully through the rows of data crystals, each one containing the final moments of an extinct race. Computer, activate emergency protocols. Show me all records relating to the Great Silence, cross-referenced with Sol system. The ancient computer wheezed to life, its processors struggling with the complex request. Slowly, holographic displays began to appear around Zermoth, showing him the death of half the galaxy. The first display showed the Zephyrian Empire at its height, 12 species working together, controlling thousands of star systems, ruling over peaceful civilizations with wisdom and strength. They had been the most advanced alliance in galactic history, their technology so sophisticated it seemed like magic. Recording begins, said a voice from the past. A Zephyrian commander appeared in the hologram, his reptilian features noble and proud. This is Fleet Commander Vexthor of the 12th Expeditionary Force. We are approaching the Sol system to establish mining operations on the third planet. Scans show primitive life forms, but nothing that poses a threat to our operations. Zermoth watched as the recording showed the Zephyrian fleet approaching Earth. 40,000 ships, each one larger and more advanced than anything the current Galactic Council could build. They had come not as conquerors, but as builders, planning to strip mine Earth's resources while relocating the primitive humans to a reservation world. The primitive inhabitants are more developed than initial scans indicated, Commander Vexthor reported in a later recording. They have crude nuclear weapons and basic spaceflight. Our cultural experts recommend standard pacification protocols. Standard pacification meant destroying the humans' military capabilities and then offering them the choice between cooperation and extinction. It was a process the Zephyrian Empire had used successfully on hundreds of worlds. But something had gone wrong. Emergency recording, Vexthor said in the next hologram. His proud features now showed confusion and fear. The humans have launched a single ship toward our fleet. It appears to be a primitive attack vessel. Our screening force is moving to intercept. Zermoth watched as the display showed tactical information from the battle. The human ship was tiny compared to the Zephyrian vessels, built from metal and chemical propulsion systems that were thousands of years out of date. It should have been destroyed instantly. Instead, it tore through the alien screening force, like a knife through paper. "This is impossible," Vexthor reported, his voice shaking. "The human vessel is using weapons we don't understand. Our shields are useless against them. They're not just destroying our ships, they're studying our technology as they fight." The recordings became more frantic as days passed. The single human ship moved through the Zephyrian fleet like a predator among sheep. It didn't just attack randomly, it targeted specific vessels, captured alien technology, and adapted its own weapons in real time. "The human ship has somehow gained access to our communication networks," Vexthor reported. "They're broadcasting something on all frequencies. Our translators say it's a message for their homeworld. We have their technology now. Send more ships." Zermoth felt his heart skip as he watched the final recording. Commander Vexthor was no longer the proud leader who had arrived at Sol. His scales were pale with terror, his eyes wide with fear that went beyond simple defeat. "Final recording of the 12th Expeditionary Force," Vexthor whispered. "The humans have destroyed our entire fleet. 40,000 ships reduced to space debris in less than a week. But that's not the worst part. They're not satisfied with victory. They're following our retreat paths back to our colonies. They want to know where we came from." The recording ended there, but Zermoth found more files. Records from Zephyrian colonies throughout the galaxy, all telling the same story. Human ships had appeared in their systems not as invaders, but as hunters. They studied each colony carefully, learned everything about Zephyrian technology and culture, and then systematically destroyed everything they found. "They don't fight like any species we've encountered," read one report. "They don't want territory or resources. They want to make sure we can never threaten their world again. They're tracking down every Zephyrian in the galaxy." On Earth, Ji-Hai and Taeho were discovering the other side of the story. Deep in the archives of human history, they found records that painted their ancestors in a very different light than the mythology suggested. "Look at this," Taeho said, pulling up a file from ancient Sumerian tablets. "This isn't a story about gods and demons. It's a military report." The tablet described the arrival of star demons who demanded Earth's submission. But instead of cowering in fear, the humans had analyzed the alien technology, reverse-engineered their weapons, and launched a counterattack that lasted for years. "The children of Earth sailed among the stars," the tablet read, "hunting the demons to their distant homes. None were spared, none were forgiven. The sky demons learned too late that Earth's children do not forgive threats to their world." Ji-Hai found similar records in Egyptian hieroglyphs, detailed battle plans showing human forces spreading across the galaxy, tracking down alien colonies and destroying them, one by one. The Egyptians hadn't worshipped gods. They had recorded humanity's first interstellar war. "Taeho, our ancestors weren't defending Earth," Ji-Hai said quietly. "They were committing genocide." Norse sagas told of warriors who traveled to Asgard and Valhalla, but the descriptions made it clear these were alien worlds. The Vikings had described in detail how human warriors had systematically exterminated the gods and claimed their technology. Celtic legends spoke of humans who became more terrible than the things they fought. Aboriginal Dreamtime stories described ancestors who sang the star people out of existence, but the songs were actually tactical communications used to coordinate attacks across multiple star systems. Back in the Forbidden Archives, Zermoth was learning the final truth. The Great Silence hadn't been a mysterious catastrophe or natural disaster. It had been humanity's systematic extermination of 12 advanced civilizations. The last recording he found was from the Galactic Council of 10,000 years ago. The speaker was a being of pure energy, one of the Ascended who had moved beyond physical form. "The humans of Sol 3 have demonstrated that they are unlike any species we have ever encountered," the Ascended being said. "They do not fight for territory, resources, or glory. They fight to ensure that any threat to their world is completely eliminated. They have turned warfare into a precise science and extinction into an art form. The recording continued. Our analysis indicates that the humans will not stop until every trace of the Zephyrian alliance has been erased from the galaxy. They are not content with victory. They want to ensure that no one will ever again threaten their world. This level of absolute retaliation is unknown in galactic history. Therefore, the Ascended being concluded, we recommend that all records of Sol 3 be classified and the system removed from general star charts. Should the humans ever develop spaceflight again, they must be treated as a completely new species with no knowledge of their previous actions. The galaxy cannot survive another human war. Zermoth sat in the ancient archives, surrounded by the records of dead civilizations, and finally understood why the current council was so nervous. They had invited the galaxy's most dangerous predators to join their peaceful alliance, and some of them were beginning to remember why that was a bad idea. On Nexus Station, Hyunwoo noticed that the surveillance of his team had increased. Security. Drones followed them everywhere, and their quarters were searched daily. Other species avoided them in the corridors, and several trade negotiations had been canceled without explanation. They're scared of us, So Young reported. I've been monitoring their communications. Several species are requesting emergency sessions with the council leadership. Scared of what? Dongmin asked. We haven't done anything threatening. Maybe that's the problem, Hyunwoo said quietly. Maybe they're scared of what we might do. None of them knew that in the depths of space, fleets were beginning to gather. The galaxy's peaceful species were preparing for war against an enemy they didn't understand, driven by instincts older than their civilizations. The humans were back among the stars, and the galaxy was about to remember why some species should be left alone. The emergency session of the Inner Council took place in the deepest chambers of Nexus Station, behind shields that could withstand a supernova. Only the most senior leaders of the galaxy's major species were present, and the tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a blade. Zermoth stood at the center of the chamber, his ancient form trembling as he presented his findings to beings who commanded the fate of trillions. Around him, the most powerful entities in the galaxy listened in growing horror as he revealed the truth about humanity's past. The species we know as humans, Zermoth began, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber's perfect acoustics, were once designated as the inhabitants of Mortis Prime, the death world that spawned the creatures responsible for the Great Silence. Speaker Velthari's crystal form flickered with stress patterns. That's impossible. The Great Silence was a natural catastrophe, a plague or stellar phenomenon that wiped out the Zephyrian alliance. No, Zermoth replied, activating the holographic displays around him. It was systematic extermination carried out by a single species that turned warfare into a science. The recordings from the Forbidden Archives played for the Council leadership. They watched in silence as Commander Vexthor described the destruction of the greatest fleet in galactic history by a single primitive human ship. They saw the tactical reports showing human forces spreading across the galaxy like a virus, hunting down and destroying entire civilizations. Defense Minister Krothan, a massive insectoid being with natural armor plating, clicked his mandibles nervously. The records must be corrupted. No single species could destroy 12 advanced civilizations. The evidence is overwhelming, Zermoth continued. Cross-referencing the archaeological data from dead worlds shows the same pattern everywhere. Human weapon signatures, human tactical approaches, human methods of total extinction. Admiral Thexara, whose aquatic species had ruled the oceans of 1,000 worlds, spoke in bubbling tones that the translators converted to speech. If this is true, then we have invited the galaxy's greatest predators to join our peaceful alliance. It gets worse, Zermoth said, his tentacles manipulating the controls to show more data. Analysis of their current technology suggests they never stopped developing weapons. Their exploration ships carry military-grade shields. Their civilian colonies are built like military bases. Their entire civilization appears to be organized around the principle of perpetual warfare. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Every species present had welcomed humanity into the galactic community. They had shared star charts, trade routes, and diplomatic protocols with beings whose ancestors had exterminated half the galaxy. "What do we know about their current capabilities?" asked Zermoth, the energy being who represented the ascended races. Zermoth pulled up recent intelligence reports. "Their technology appears primitive, but our analysts now believe this is deliberate misdirection. Hidden scans of their ships show power sources we don't understand and weapon systems that don't match their supposed technological level. Their behavior has been completely peaceful," Velthari pointed out. "They've followed every protocol, accepted every restriction we've placed on them." "That's what makes them so dangerous," Zermoth replied. "The ancient records describe the same pattern. Humans appear peaceful and cooperative until they decide you're a threat. Then they don't just defend themselves. They systematically destroy everything you've ever built." Krothan's armor plates rattled with agitation. "Are you suggesting we've made a mistake in accepting them into the council?" "I'm suggesting," Zermoth said carefully, "that we may have awakened something that should have remained sleeping." On Nexus Station, the human delegation was becoming increasingly aware that something had changed. What had started as mild suspicion from other species had evolved into outright fear. Corridors emptied when they approached. Security teams followed them everywhere. Several alien species had requested immediate transfers away from sections of the station where humans were present. "It's like they think we're going to explode or something," Dongmin observed as they walked through another deserted corridor. "Theory, surveillance is getting more sophisticated too," So Young added, checking her scanner. "They're not just watching us anymore. They're studying us, analyzing our behavior patterns, our stress responses, our physical capabilities." Hyunwoo stopped, walking, and turned to face his companions. "I think we need to consider the possibility that our presence here has triggered something we don't understand." "Like what?" Dongmin asked. "I don't know," Hyunwoo admitted. "But every instinct I have is telling me that we're in danger." Meanwhile, on Earth, Jihai and Taeho had made a discovery that turned their understanding of human history upside down. Deep in the archives of the Vatican, they had found records that the Church had kept secret for centuries. "These aren't just historical documents," Jihai said, staring at the ancient texts. "They're instruction manuals. The records described in detail how ancient humans had reverse-engineered alien technology, how they had studied enemy tactics and turned them against their creators, how they had systematically tracked down and eliminated every trace of alien influence on Earth." "Look at this section," Taeho said, pointing to a passage written in medieval Latin. "It describes something called the Great Cleansing, a systematic effort to remove all alien artifacts and knowledge from Earth. According to the records, humanity's ancestors hadn't just defeated the alien invaders. They had spent centuries making sure that no trace of alien technology remained on Earth. Every artifact had been destroyed, every alien base had been obliterated, every piece of foreign knowledge had been erased from human memory. They were trying to protect future generations," Jihai realized. "They knew that if humans ever encountered aliens again, it would be better if we appeared primitive and harmless. But why?" Taeho asked. The answer came in the final document they found, written in the hand of someone who had lived through the ancient war. "We have seen what we become when we are threatened. We have watched ourselves turn into something worse than the monsters we fought. If our children must live among the stars, let them do so in peace. Let them never know what their ancestors were capable of when pushed to the edge of extinction." Back in the council chambers, the debate had moved from shock to action. The galaxy's leaders were facing a crisis unlike anything in their recorded history. "We have three options," Defense Minister Krothan stated. "We can maintain the current situation and hope the humans remain peaceful. We can attempt to restrict their activities further and risk provoking them. Or we can take preemptive action to protect the galaxy." "Preemptive action?" Velthari's crystal form flickered. "Are you suggesting we attack them?" "I'm suggesting we consider all options," Krothan replied. "If the ancient records are accurate, humanity represents an existential threat to galactic civilization." Admiral Thexara's aquatic form rippled with concern. But they've done nothing to justify such action. We would be attacking a peaceful species based on ancient history. Ancient history that shows them systematically exterminating 12 civilizations, Zormuth reminded them. The question isn't whether they're capable of such actions, the records prove they are. The question is whether we can afford to wait and see if they choose to repeat them. The debate continued for hours, but gradually a consensus emerged. The galaxy's peaceful species had survived for thousands of years by avoiding conflict and resolving disputes through diplomacy. But humanity represented something outside their experience, a species that appeared peaceful, but possessed the capability and historical inclination toward total warfare. Motion to implement Containment Protocol 7, Krothan announced formally. The protocol hadn't been used in over 1,000 years. It was designed for threats so dangerous that they required the combined military might of the entire galactic community to contain. All in favor? Velthari asked. One by one, the leaders of the galaxy's major species voted to approve military action against humanity. They did so with heavy hearts, knowing they were potentially starting a war with beings whose ancestors had turned warfare into an art form. Motion approved, Velthari announced. Fleet mobilization will begin immediately. All member species are required to contribute ships and personnel for the containment of the Sol system. As the council session ended, messages began flowing to military commands across the galaxy. Within hours, the largest fleet in modern galactic history was beginning to assemble, 100,000 ships from 27 different species, all converging on a single star system. On Nexus Station, emergency alarms began to sound. The human delegation found themselves confined to quarters as security teams took positions throughout the station. Through their window, they could see alien warships gathering in formation. Well, Dongmin said grimly, I think our diplomatic mission just ended. Hyunwoo activated his communication device, sending an encrypted message toward Earth. Alert Earth Defense Command, we have a problem. In the depths of space, ancient instincts were awakening on both sides. The galaxy's peaceful species were preparing for a war they hoped to win quickly and decisively. But on Earth, defense systems that had been sleeping for millennia were beginning to stir, and humanity was about to rem. The first sign that something was wrong came from the automated monitoring stations at the edge of Sol system. Admiral Sung Ho Kang was reviewing routine reports in Luna Base when the alarms began to sound throughout Earth Defense Command. Admiral, we have multiple contacts approaching the system perimeter, reported Lieutenant Min Ji-han from the sensor station. Estimate, dear God, sir. Computer says over 100,000 ships. Sung Ho felt his blood turn to ice. In his 30 years of military service, he had never seen a fleet that large. Earth's entire space navy consisted of maybe 300 vessels, most of them exploration and research ships. Are they responding to our communication attempts? He asked, maintaining the calm voice that had served him well through decades of crisis management. Negative, sir. They're maintaining radio silence and approaching in military formation. Computer. Analysis suggests 27 different ship types from multiple species. Sung Ho looked at the tactical display showing the approaching fleet. The aliens weren't trying to hide their intentions. This was an invasion force designed to overwhelm any possible resistance. Alert all Earth Defense Forces, he commanded. Activate the deep sleep protocols and wake up everything we've got in storage. Send emergency signals to all human colonies and research stations. Tell them to implement Directive 7 immediately. Minji's fingers flew over her controls, sending coded messages throughout the Sol system. On Mars, automated systems began awakening industrial complexes that had been disguised as civilian mining operations. In the asteroid belt, defense platforms that had been floating in powered-down mode for decades suddenly came online. Throughout the system, humanity's peaceful facade began to fall away like a discarded mask. On Luna Base, Sung Ho moved to the secure command center buried deep beneath the moon's surface. The chamber had been built during Earth's early space expansion, designed to coordinate system-wide defense against exactly this type of threat. Status report on system defenses, he ordered, as his staff took their positions. Mars defense grid is 90% operational, reported Commander Woojin Park. Estimate full activation in 6 hours. Asteroid belt platforms are coming online ahead of schedule, added Major Yoon Seo Kim. The AI systems have been running continuous updates even while in hibernation. What about the deep storage units? Sung Ho asked. Opening now, sir. Min Ji replied. Estimate 12 hours for full deployment of stored assets. On Earth's surface, massive facilities hidden beneath mountains and ocean floors began to stir. Assembly lines that had been mothballed for generations roared back to life, producing weapons and ships from designs that were supposedly obsolete. The secret that Earth's government had kept from the galactic community was simple. Humanity had never stopped preparing for war. Every civilian colony was a disguised military base. Every research station was an intelligence outpost. Every exploration ship carried enough firepower to destroy a small fleet. On Nexus Station, the human delegation was under armed guard, but Dongmin had been monitoring the situation through hidden communication devices. His expression grew grimmer with each report he received. They're not just containing us, he told Hyunwoo and So-young. The fleet assembling out there is large enough to sterilize our entire system. Maybe we can negotiate, Hyunwoo said, though his voice lacked conviction. With what? Dongmin asked. They've already made their decision. The question now is whether Earth Defense Command follows Protocol 7 or Protocol Omega. So-young looked confused. What's the difference? Protocol 7 is defensive, Dongmin explained. Protect Earth and human colonies at all costs. Protocol Omega is... He paused, struggling to find the words. Protocol Omega is what our ancestors did to the Zephyrian Alliance. In the approaching alien fleet, confidence was high, despite the massive scale of the operation. Fleet Admiral Kexara, a proud member of the crystalline Velthari species, commanded the largest military force in galactic history from the bridge of his flagship. Status report on the human defenses, he commanded. Minimal, Admiral, reported his tactical officer. A few dozen primitive ships scattered throughout the system, some orbital platforms around the major planets, but nothing that poses a serious threat to our forces. And their technology level? Consistent with previous intelligence reports, sir. Crude chemical rockets, basic nuclear weapons, primitive energy shields. Their ships appear to be designed for exploration rather than combat. Admiral Kexara felt satisfied with the intelligence reports. The humans might be dangerous if allowed to develop freely, but caught this early in their space age, they would be easy to contain. Signal the fleet, he ordered. Begin final approach to Sol 3. Prepare to implement Containment Protocol 7. But, as the alien fleet moved deeper into Sol's system, they began to encounter things that didn't match their intelligence reports. The asteroid belt, which should have been empty space with floating rocks, was filled with energy signatures that made no sense. Admiral, we're detecting massive power sources throughout the asteroid field, the tactical officer reported with growing concern. Explain. Unknown, sir. The asteroids themselves appear to be artificial constructs. They're powering up weapons, systems that... Admiral, these energy readings are higher than our own dreadnoughts. Admiral Kexara moved to the tactical display and stared at the readings in disbelief. The asteroids weren't just hiding weapons platforms, they were weapons platforms disguised to look like natural space debris. How many of them? He asked. Computer estimates over 10,000 individual defense platforms, sir, and they're all activating simultaneously. On Luna Base, Admiral Sung Ho watched the alien fleet's approach with the calm of a professional who had spent his entire life preparing for this moment. Around him, his staff coordinated the awakening of humanity's true military might. Mars Industrial Complex reports full activation, Minji announced. They're launching the first wave of system defense ships. Asteroid Belt confirms all platforms operational. They're requesting targeting data. Deep Storage reports successful activation of archived ship classes. The Nemesis-class dreadnoughts are being deployed. Sung Ho nodded calmly. The aliens had made a fundamental error in their intelligence gathering. They had assumed that humanity's peaceful behavior meant that humans were actually peaceful. They had confused choosing not to fight with unable to fight. Open a communication channel to the alien fleet, he ordered. Channel open, sir. Sung-ho looked directly into the camera, knowing his words would be heard by beings who had just discovered they had made a terrible mistake. "This is Admiral Sung-ho, Kang of Earth Defense Command," he said, in a voice that carried the weight of 10,000 years of human warfare. "You have brought a military fleet into our home system without invitation or provocation. You have 30 minutes to reverse course and leave Sol system. This is your only warning." On the alien flagship, Admiral Kexara listened to the transmission with growing unease. There was something in the human's voice, a confidence that made no sense given the overwhelming odds. "Admiral," his tactical officer called out, "we're detecting additional power sources throughout the system. The human colonies on Mars and the outer planets, they're not civilian settlements, they're military installations." "Impossible," Kexara replied, but his certainty was beginning to waver. "Sir, the moon of Sol 3 is showing massive energy readings from beneath its surface. It appears to be... Admiral Luna appears to be hollow. It's an artificial construct." Admiral Kexara felt the first stirrings of real fear. The intelligence reports had been wrong. Completely, catastrophically wrong. The humans hadn't built a few primitive ships. They had militarized their entire star system. "Signal the Council," he ordered. "Request immediate reinforcements." "Sir, we are the reinforcements. This is the largest fleet the galaxy has ever assembled." On Earth, deep beneath the ocean floors, massive shipyards that had been hidden for generations began launching vessels that defied the aliens' understanding of human technology. Ships that moved without visible propulsion, weapons that bent, space-time itself, defenses that turned incoming fire into harmless light. The truth was finally becoming clear to the alien fleet. Humanity had never stopped developing military technology. They had simply gotten very good at hiding it behind a facade of peaceful exploration. "Admiral," the tactical officer reported with barely controlled panic, "the humans are launching ships from locations throughout the system. Our computer estimates... This can't be right." "What does it say?" Kexara demanded. "It estimates the humans have over 50,000 combat vessels hidden throughout Sol system, sir, and they're all more advanced than anything in our fleet." "Admiral," Sung-ho's voice came over the communication channel again, and this time there was something in his tone that made every alien in the fleet remember ancient instincts about predators and prey. "Your 30 minutes are up," Sung-ho said calmly. "You came to our home with weapons drawn. You made the same mistake your ancestors made 10,000 years ago. The only question now is whether you're smart enough to learn from their example. In the depths of space, sleeping giants were awakening, and the Gal,